All right, in today's video, I have a fun one. So I pretty much broke an ad account. Well, I didn't really break it. I just set up a broken one to really show you guys exactly what I look out for when I'm doing an audit of an account and really how I would go about fixing this. And that way you can kind of compare to your account the way it looks right now and see any similarities in structure or any hidden things that you might not have seen in your account or didn't know was a bad thing. So here we're just going to pick apart an entire ad account, really just how I would structure it differently, or the roadmap that I would take in the coming 30, 60, 90 days to really rebuild this account for success. Okay, so let's dive right into it. So the first thing that I noticed off the bat, just off of the symbols that we have here, is the fact that we have display expansion running. What that means is, if you didn't already know, one of the really common settings within search campaigns is you can include the display network. And what happens is, let's say you spend a portion of your search budget. So of the keywords that you're targeting, maybe we capped out on demand. So in you have $100 daily budget, but you really spend $80. What Google's going to do, it's going to start pouring that unused search budget, right? Because there's no more demand to capture for that day. Let's say again, it's going to use that remaining budget and push it towards display. And that's not something we want, because we're not even really running a display campaign. Like, I would run a dedicated campaign for that. And same goes for search partners, because uncontrollably you can just start spending there. So those are two things right off the bat we want to uncheck. And then a really common other setting is under the location options. You always want to be doing people in or regularly in, because you don't want somebody showing interest. Let's say maybe they traveled to this place, but then they went back home and they don't actually situate there. What's going to happen is you might be targeting somebody literally in a different country, and just because they visited for a week, 2 weeks, you're still showing ads to them. So we always want to make sure both of those are off. Obviously we ticked off no there, so that's a super simple setting, and then that's how I know we're back to normal. Alrighty, and then the next thing I always like to look at as well, just the bidding strategy, right? Like, how are we actually optimizing? Are we optimizing towards conversions here? And one of the things that sticks out to me, particularly for this brand campaign, number one, how high the budget is in proportion to the non-branded campaigns, right? Because typically speaking, we want to have a 20 to 30% allocation between branded and then non-branded campaigns, because the whole goal here, again, is to grow your business with Google Ads. If we're just running a ton of branded search or branded shopping, sure, that ROAS on the front end is going to look fantastic, but you're not doing any good for your business, because you're just recycling customers that really would have bought from you anyway. And then the idea is you're running a branded search campaign to make sure you protect against competitors. Okay, so we want to make sure with a branded search campaign, we're spending as little as we possibly need to protect ourselves, and running with a maximized conversion value bidding strategy, or any automated bidding strategy, your average CPCs are automatically going to be higher. Why? Because with smart bidding, Google is trying to find the correct people to target based on the signals that they have in their browsing behaviors. So it might think somebody's worth a $5, $10 bid, when really you could have just said a max bid on manual CPC of $1 and captured that exact same click, right? So what I always like to do with branded search campaigns, we go to settings. The bidding strategy should always be on manual CPC. And that way we know we're only paying $1, $2 per click. We go back to the branded search campaign right here, and then you're not going to see the manual CPC right away because it's just glitched. Just reload your account and you're going to see it. In this case, we have it right here. You're going to see a manual CPC. I would set this no more than a dollar. So let's set it as $1 here. And then what we always want to look at here is, let's go back to campaign level. We want to monitor impression share. So the metrics that I want to add here to show you are right here. So search impression share, and then let's do loss to budget, and I'll explain what these are. Okay, so the key with a branded search campaign, right? The whole goal is visibility for your own brand at the top of the page. So what this metric indicates, again, if you've specifically targeted your branded keywords on phrase or exact match, it's going to pretty much, what this means is, of the locations that you're targeting, so let's say Canada, and the branded searches that there are, how many of those searches do you actually show up for? And this is going to be a percentage. Typically speaking, you want this at least 80, 85%. Again, especially if you have high competition, or if you go to auction insights right here and you see a lot of competitors popping up, It might not even be that they're intentionally bidding on you and have a separate campaign for competitor conquesting on your name. What's happening is they're running broad match or performance max, and as you know, it matches to competitor queries as well naturally. And again, even though they're not intentionally doing it, you still need to protect yourself. So we want to make sure we're 85% plus here, and you want to see which column you are losing out for. The easiest one to solve is the lost impression share to budget. You might see 15 or 20%. And that's an indicator that you can just put 20% more budget, approximately speaking, and really just instead of losing that impression share, you're actually going to funnel that into here, right? Because you're spending enough all of a sudden to capture that additional 20%. Or you might have lost to rank, which you honestly, in the easiest case with a brand campaign, you likely just need to bid more because the combination between quality score and then also your bids, but quality score with your own brand, because obviously Google recognizes it's your brand, is going to be high. So you might just need to bid a little bit more aggressively. But I would keep CPCs anywhere from $1 to $2 in typical industries. Again, if you're in something more competitive and non-branded CPCs are $5, $10, again, inevitably you might have just a more expensive brand campaign, just because again your industry is more expensive. You have more expensive, more competitors that are bidding more money as well. So be conscious of that. But typically speaking, $1 to $2. Looking at search impression share, always on manual CPC, and then also we want to make sure on the keyword level we're actually only running phrase or exact match. So again, another thing is we don't want to be running broad on our branded term. Why? Is because we're not going for intent, or we don't want Google to go out and find other queries to target. We only want to target phrase or exact match because we know exactly the brand. We know our exact brand name, right? We know the exact keywords we want to target. And I would do variations of your brand too. You can say brand name. You can say brand name plus product type and put that in its own ad group as well. It really depends, but you would want all variations. Typically on phrase or exact match, both work fine, I would say, for a brand campaign. So that's how I would fix up this brand campaign. And then I would also do a reassessment of how much budget we're actually allocating to brand and non-branded campaigns. But that's kind of the initial lowest hanging fruit. The next things that I always like to look at is our campaign structures with shopping. Okay. Especially with the budget we're at, I would honestly stick to one of these prospecting tools, and I would just have let's say $150 per day poured into one, just because of the budget we have, right? Because again, unless there's a specific test being run, I would rather just funnel all the spend into one campaign, and then maybe we'll have another campaign at $40 per day to test out some new products or give some more product attention that had the potential to perform, or zombie ones that just couldn't spend if you have thousands and thousands of SKUs. So the most important thing that I look at for the shopping side is making sure that brand is excluded. In this case, again, we're on manual CPC. So if we were on smart bidding, the lowest hanging fruit, again, Google has to go after is your brand. So it's going to match to those type of searches, which is, again, good. You might want to have a branded shopping campaign to make sure, same thing we're doing on the search side, making sure that keyword based, making sure that searches for our brand name are being captured on the search network. And on the same time at the shopping network, we want to make sure that our actual products are showing, not that of a competitor's. So that's the idea there. But if we're doing a non-branded one, what I don't like is we're just running a complete catch-all with no product categorization. Again, this is not something you typically want to do. You have something called custom labels. So you click this plus button and we go to custom labels. Again, if you don't have anything mapped, it's not going to show anything here, but this is where we really want to use custom labels to group certain types of products. Maybe you have products that are 20% margin, those that are 40 or 50%. So with ads, you only want to focus on those type of products. And you can actually set up a tag in your backend, so in Shopify or WooCommerce, whatever provider you're using, to make sure that we only push the products with that tag into the custom label. You can set that up within Merchant Center or a separate tool called Data Feedwatch, but there's really ways to categorize these products because this is your whole structure, right? If you think about it, you can create different ad groups, but if you're just targeting all products on the shopping side or even Performance Max where you have asset groups, you aren't really changing anything. So you really want to think about these custom labels as your ad groups. I would honestly even stick to one ad group, and then you can have like 4 different product categories or a few categories split by margins or product types. There's different ways that you can segment it, but that way very easily, right? Because if you have, let's say, I don't know, on a very basic level, boots, shoes, loafers, all the different types of kind of shoes that you sell. The shoes one wasn't a good example, but that way you can see which specific one performs best. And that way, we know maybe we want to shut off a certain product category, or we can dive deeper into the product as well, rather than just having an all product. We are also targeting all products here in the Performance Max campaign. So pretty much we're just kind of competing with ourselves. There's not really a clear reason why we're running all products in both campaigns. It could be to see which one's better, for example, but again, typically speaking, with an account at this stage, we would just want to focus on one shopping network oriented campaign, in this case, Performance Max. If you have good assets, you can add assets in, but we can also just do a feed only Performance Max campaign. So we push all of the spend to the shopping network and also be able to leverage, like we have here, a maximize conversion value bidding strategy. So really make sure that you're categorizing product. The next thing that I want to talk about is being careful with these settings within Performance Max as well. This can pretty much customize your ad copy. So if you're running assets with images, headlines, descriptions, allowing you to serve on other placements that Performance Max offers, Google can customize your ad copy. You can add guidelines, and I would always add URL exclusions if you're running final URL expansion. You don't typically want to push traffic to an about us page, contact us page, just a simple FAQ. Again, if you're running advertorials or editorials, different types of landing pages, different story, like blog oriented, that can work. But you want to make sure you add exclusions. If you don't do that and you have kind of by default, you just want to push products to a product page, I would turn this off for sure. And then also be careful with the image enhancements and landing page images. Might not pull the correct pictures that you want. And then video enhancements, the same thing, because it can kind of resize your images, make them shorter. So be careful with that. Now, the biggest killer that I see in almost every single account is brand is not excluded. We always want to exclude brand when we run Performance Max, because what's going to happen is with the whole goal of Performance Max, it being more of a bottom of funnel, middle of funnel campaign, more so obviously on the bottom of funnel side, it's going to go after the lowest hanging fruit. And if you leave your brand as the lowest hanging fruit, all of a sudden it's just going to keep going after that traffic. And it's going to look on paper like you're getting a 5-6x return on ad spend, which is fantastic on, let's say, non-branded traffic. But then if you actually navigate to your search terms, you're going to see that all of what you're getting is branded traffic for those inflated prices, like I said, of $8 to $10 per CPC. And that's why we want brand excluded here, because we want all of the branded traffic to actually be funneled into our branded search campaign, where we have a $1 max CPC. So the two things that I would do is you can set the brand exclusion within Performance Max, and then you also want to go to shared library exclusion list and create a branded negative keyword list. So you can call brand variation. Again, apply this to your own brand, but you would want to have all variations. And then I would typically do, if it's one word, on broad, 2 on phrase, and then 2 to 3 on phrase, and then 3+ on exact match. Okay, and that way we just make sure that we're correctly excluding terms, and making sure that we just don't show our brand at all, right, for non-branded campaigns. Because the whole goal here, again, guide Google into being able to at least go after newer customers. And if your brand is just being funneled in here, then obviously it has the easiest ability to do that. On to the next stack of campaigns that we have here. So we have 2 search campaigns as well. If we look at what we're running here, we have one at $5 per day budget and then one at $35 per day. And you can see here, we're just running super, super broad searches. And especially with a account at this stage where we don't have a crazy amount of budget, we really want to be focused. Broad match is not necessarily a bad thing, but we want to start off with exact match, because that's going to allow us to get in front of the exact searchers that we want to target. Typically, we want our keywords to have at least 3 terms within them, because again, if we're just targeting phone, that could be matched to really anything. That's not a specific query you want to target, and likely why, again, if this was ran, we wouldn't see conversions at all. And so for this campaign, if we look, we have a mix of broad and phrase match. Again, like I said, I would probably stick to exact match. I would even simplify this into one search campaign. So we have one non-branded search campaign, a branded search campaign, and then I would stick with a Performance Max, likely feed only to start, just so we can target the shopping network. But before I summarize the strategy, one more thing I noticed is our bidding strategy as well. We have a target CPA of $2. That's pretty much going to kill the campaign before it starts, because we're just choking it, right? If we're telling the algorithm we're only willing to pay $2 per conversion, all of a sudden the amount of impressions it can serve in order to get us that result is super, super limited. Okay, so we need to make sure that we either set a realistic target, or we start off on manual CPC. That way we just consolidate some traffic. Once we start to get conversions, that's when we can move towards a target CPA with a realistic target around what we achieve. So if we start to get $50 to $70 per sale profitably, and that's something that's profitable for our business, we want to set our target at 100 just to be a little bit more aggressive and not restrict the algorithm in any way from going out and continue finding those new customers for us. Because again, the way that I would want you to think about these targets that you have, target CPA, target ROAS, they're almost like guardrails. And again, the more restricted you make these guardrails, all of a sudden the narrower and the narrower your lane is to actually target and find new customers, right? Because it's harder. There's not as many people in the market to right now achieve that exact target that you have. So that's what you want to be conscious of. So summarizing everything that we discussed, we want to restructure this account in a pretty significant way. We want to make sure that we have really just 3 campaigns to start if we weren't creating any new campaigns from here for now. So I would have a branded search campaign. Again, if our total budget is around, let's say $300, I would take $40 to $50 per day and have that as a branded search campaign with a $1 max bid on manual CPC. Then we want to run a performance max campaign with the brand excluded, and then also targeting products specifically by product type, by margin, or really any other way you want to categorize. There's also a way to do by bestsellers. So that would be the allocation. And then we would also have a supporting search campaign, really just mirroring the product categories that we're targeting. We might even look at the search terms that we get that are actually converting, and then we can modify those and put them into the search campaign as keywords with specific ad groups, kind of targeting those searches that we already know are converting. Okay, that's it for this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.